Okay, so once that's been drying for a bit, you should be able to just unmask it. Now you might get, if you've used bands, a couple of little band marks, but we can sand them out afterwards. So what we're going to do, we're just going to fill in with a little bit of glue just around those areas where it literally, the bands have been, and obviously the glue hasn't gone, so we don't want any gaps down there. And what we're going to do, we're just going to very lightly sand that all in afterwards anyway. Right, a couple of things we can do now. We can put the air brakes on the back, so obviously it's the thickest part to the outside, and these literally will just sit on there like that. So I always put a bit of glue just on the back end there, and the air brakes. Now fortunately, unlike other kits out there at the moment, such as the Hasegawa one spring to mind, where you can have open or shut air brakes, obviously these are just closed on this, but that's not too much of a problem. Right, we just whip this noseband off. Right, the next thing you've got is your choice of top to the nose of the aircraft, like here. This one here is what we call the bird shredder. It's 4 little blades for the indication friend or foe setup. So literally that is going to sit on there, but obviously there is another version that comes in the kit which doesn't have anything. So that sits in there. Then all we're going to do is just pop a drop of glue and let the capillary action pull that all around, just like that. And then the same on the sides. You've got 2 types of nose in the box, but all of the American types have the lump on the side, if you like, which goes to the top. Oops. And this will fit in, which will then is quite a nice fit. Should just sit quite nicely on the nose like that. I'll just do one on the other side. Fit on there, and with a bit of a nudge they go on the front of the nose, just like that. It's all ready for the nose to go on the front. Okay, so the next little thing we can do is put the engine together. Pretty straightforward. Make sure you get the right parts if you're doing the block 52-32 ones, because obviously you get different types. Basically, engine fan just goes down in the base like that. If you hold it there, hold it up the other way, you should be able to get a nice bit of glue in from the inside, and that will then whiz its way all the way around the middle bit there. And then basically you've got a little tab at the top there, which the actual entire section drops into very nicely, and makes you a nice good fit. There again, if you're using extra thin, it's a dowel. You can just literally touch and it will flow all the way around. There we go, we'll just go around like that. Okay, then you can leave that off to one side to dry. This little tip, put it on a clamp, something like that. You can hold it just like that, pop it off to one side. Job done. Same way, cleaning out, cut them out, and then I use just a metal file here just to take care of those little tabs all running around there, but I won't put it on yet because obviously we're going to use a little bit of metal colour, and it'll be easier to do that as a separate. So right, the other little thing we can do as well, which is a little bit different with Tamiya kits, following on from the 132, because it goes exactly the same. What you're going to get is a little screwdriver and a little bag. And then obviously try not to lose these, because they are quite important, although they're tiny little fiddly things. You don't have the screws for going onto the actual the later kit, if you like. The Block 52 is was the older one, the original, the first of the 148s, if you like. Where the other ones, I've noticed that you don't actually have the screws to screw them in. So literally, what you're going to do, you're going to put these pins in like this that poke up, and then what you actually have is a situation where these screw to the top like that. If you're doing just the normal one, you can just then put normal glue right the way around the bottom like that, and then glue it into place. If you're doing this one, which is the Block 32-52 kits, and it goes in like that. If you're doing it onto the, as we're going to do here, the Block 50 kits, you can just glue it if you want, or if you want to, you can actually pop a screw in. So you have this tiny little screwdriver, and for those of you who haven't done the 1/32 scale, it's exactly the same. You screw this in, and then what happens is a very nice touch is that you come along and then you actually drop the tail section, fits onto this, by using these pins. It's going to be on these little rubber washers that we've got here, and then it's going to slide over, which is great if you're taking it to shows or you're going to take it round to somebody. You can pop the tail off, that way it fit in a box quite nicely. Or as I do, I put them on their roof and then stick him on the box upside down, so all the dodgy bits that are likely to fall off or get broken in transit are all poking upwards, and that way if it does slightly move around a bit, you're not going to worry about it if you're on a nice soft surface. Right, so the next few bits we're going to have to put on is the underside of the wings. Now make sure you open up the holes if you're doing any of the fighter versions. Obviously if you're doing the Thunderbirds version and you're not going to have pylons on, obviously you're not going to need to open these holes up. If you're doing the earlier block, the 32s, things like that, you've got a couple of little lumps just under here that you're going to have to sand off. Dead simple. If you do it off now before it goes on, you can put it on and sand them literally away. This being a Block 50 does have these little bumps. Very straightforward. If you've done your sanding nice, without over sanding it, as I say, just literally take off your tab, you should notice it fits on there perfectly, really, with hardly any filler at all, with no filler at all. So what we're going to do, we're just going to bit of extra thin around the area, just like that, just to take care of any tiny little gaps. Generous amount at the leading edge. Okay, and then obviously where these wings join. Now, little tip I do, if you're using extra thin, let that start to dry off, so obviously it's touch dry, and come along with your clamps. If you've got some nice flat ones that lay flat, sort of like that, then you can bite it straight across and you'll find that it levels out that entire section with the wingtip area as well, and that way you've got a nice smooth finish right the way over. Now if you're going to be really picky, you could fill this little tiny line that runs across here, but in all honesty you really shouldn't have to. It's a very nice fit without too much trouble at all. So we'll just get the other side on. Next on is these little covers here. Now if you've done a nice job sanding them out, they're a perfect fit again, so we don't have to worry. So we're going to do a bit of Tamiya extra thin in there first, and then literally these are total drop fit in there, just like there. There's one, a little bit more on there because it starts to dry out. Okay, there's two. As I say, if you don't touch them, they're a perfect little drop fit straight into there, just like that. So if you have got any tiny little lines, just give it a little bit of glue, extra thin, and let it just capillary action do its work, just like that. And the next thing on, we've got these tiny little receivers that go onto the wingtips, onto the front of the wings, which is going to go just underneath there like that. That's one. Same on the other side. Next part is the intake. So we've basically, what we've done is we've put the little bar that runs down the middle, and we've painted that silver once it's in. Otherwise, if you try and do it silver, it's quite a narrow gap. You put it in there, the paint gets scraped off anyway. So with a very thin brush, just carefully paint the inside there, just like that. If we bring you in a bit, you can see it sits in there, just like so. So the next thing you do is flip it over, and we can put the detailing for the actual undercarriage nose wheel in there. So that's just that piece there that sits on. Okay, bit of liquid right the way around. You might have to give it a bit of a nudge and a push to get it in there if you did the way I did with the actual dipping it completely, submerging it in future, because sometimes obviously it takes up the space, and being very good tooling as it is, there isn't a lot of spare room. Okay, next thing to do is, once that is on, is to put it onto the sides. So pick a side to start with, and I'm just going to put some glue in here and into that front hole, and then literally we're just going to slide this in together, and with any luck it should fit very nicely just in like so. So we've got it in there, and we've got it lined up nicely with the undercarriage underneath as well. So we can just do the same on the other side. I'll put it on here, just like that, and then we can bring those two halves together, and then give them a bit of a squish if you have to, just to get them in. Okay, and for a moment, just do the top, just like that, and bring that together. And then you can have a look on the underside and see what the join is like. If you're quite happy with it and it's all lying okay, you can literally drop a liquid cement. This rear one does tend to be a little bit more fiddly, so it's worth holding it just for a few moments, just like that. Also, whilst I'm holding it, you might notice just here on this side, which is the actual aircraft port side, you would have two little tabs just like these. I've sanded them off this one. Obviously, if you're doing the Thunderbirds version, you'll have to sand both sides off. Basically, nice fine sandpaper, sand it off, and then you can polish it up again, and it will be ready for painting. So we're just going to hold this for a few moments. Okay, so that's been held there for a few minutes, and it's just about holding now. So what we can actually do is put this top piece on next. Now, there again, it's a bit of a fit, so you just want to have a push around with it and see how it fits on. If it's not fitting on there correctly for any reason, there's usually a good reason for it. It should be quite a nice fit. So once you're on it and you're happy, we just run some extra thin around, just like that. Then we can just down these sides, and then we can just nudge it together just a little bit. It's the same thing, we're just going to hold it just to take care of any little joins. Right, and whilst that front part is just drying, what you can also do is put on these little scoops which go on the side. Now, there's a little tiny little tab just at the front here, very, very small. Don't take it off because you need that, because it makes for the perfect gap as it scoops in. So all we do, put it on there, touch just a tiny bit of Tamiya, and there we go, we're on there. So we can just do the same for the other side. That's it. So you should end up with it looking like that, and you've got the two little gaps just in between there, just like that. Okay, final thing to go on is the front ring. Now, you can put this on now if you wanted to, or you can do as I'm going to do, is I'm going to leave it off for the moment because I'm going to spray it grey, and that way we'll get a perfect band of grey before it goes into the white of the actual intake itself. So just for the moment, if I show you I've done the other one, because this is the Thunderbirds one, I've already put it on there, and also it will give you a nice view of the intake system there, how the different shapes they are. You've obviously got one a lot thinner, and the other one is what I call the smiley mouth and the drop jaw, but it goes just like that. But as I say, with the Thunderbird, because it's all going to be white, we've done this one already and it's all ready to go. It's all fitted like that, but then this one, it will just be far easier to paint it completely grey, and then once it's grey we can then stick it to the front and pop it on there, and in the meantime we can mask up that intake to keep it nice and white. Right then, so we're getting to get the main part of the intake put on. Now there's two ways to do this. There's another way of doing it where basically you don't put the top half of the fuselage on and you can get them to meet up and all the rest of it. That's one way of doing it, and that is on the DVD, and it's on the site as well. So you can have a look at that one, which is stills photos of how to do it. This is a slightly better technique that I found to do it, working certainly with the Block 32, because for some reason it's a different part, but I can't get any difference on measurements, but the actual intake doesn't like to fit as well as it does on the Block 50 intake. The Block 50 tends to go in there very easily, as we've done on there, and does a nice fit. The Block 32-52 one seems to be slightly different. So what I've done to get around this problem is that I've sanded off the tabs and the little edges and just sanded this intake face down a little bit. Basically, nice piece of flat, big sanding stick, keeping it nice and flat. It's got to be flat because you don't want to take off any edge. Bit of a rub all round, and just flushed it back. Now I've left the one down here, the actual main part is as is, but certainly this one I've taken back and I've taken off the little lip which overhangs it to line it all up. You don't really need it. Now the best way to do this is to literally, what you're gonna do, you're gonna put this over the top, line it in, and then push the underside up and in, if you like. So if you put your thumb at the beginning and literally you sort of line up the back, put it in, drop it down, then put your thumb at the front here and push back, and you should find He says did it perfectly the first time. It should. You hear it click, and it clicks in and drops, and then fits in there and makes a perfect fit. It's a lot easier than doing it the other way with the stills, which is the way I used to do it. You know, I've actually built now about 15 of these particular kits, and each time I used to do it the other way. This time I thought, oh, you know, because this didn't fit just as well, I thought I would do it this way. The other thing as well, sometimes you get a small gap just down the back here. No problem doing it this way because you've sanded it back. It sits back just a tiniest amount more and makes for a better fit. Also, when you look on the inside, you might just have to push down. So if you use some tweezers and a bit of super glue just to push that intake, just to level it all up in there to make a nice fit. But there we go, it does go in nice and easy. Just sand it back a little bit and it'll drop back in. If not, you'll notice it won't fit in the groove, if you like, where this fits down and goes in. Once it's in, usual thing, just going to touch and flow some extra thin around, and then just a little bit up that gap, which we'll take care of if needed with a little bit of filler as well. But that's the major trickiest part of the actual kit. It's a dream, it goes together very, very well. But this intake business has got a lot of people on the forums a little bit stumped of the best way to do it and all the rest of it. That's just the way I do it, but it does make it a lot easier and makes for a better join when it comes here to the back. If I zoom you in, you can see what I'm on about, but it's this line here going down. As you can see, it's just a small little line, and when you see the actual intake, it all fits in there very, very nicely with no problem whatsoever. Right, so what we're going to do now is work on the actual undercarriage. Now there is two differences between the two kits. As we were saying before, you get different types of wheels with them and different types of light setup. Now I've already put together a few of the bits over here for what we call the Block 32, which is the lighter undercarriage. Basically, you're going to have the different sprues which lay them out quite sort of differently, so you can work it out. But basically, in a nutshell, the differences are the 32 kits have the lights, the older type have the lights at the rear here. We've got these little lights back here. If we just bring you in a bit, you can see obviously you've got lights on this one, and then this one obviously we don't have any lights on there at all. The other thing as well that's quite noticeable about the two is you've got ejector pin marks quite noticeably, and they're quite deep on the actual Block 50 kit, which is the first one that came out. Block 52 has got them, but very, very lighter, and you can almost get away without touching them, but you are going to need to. So if we just pull you out a little bit, if you imagine what we're going to do now is work on these. So usual thing, I always pop the tyres together. I don't sand off the peg marks. What I tend to do is line them up together with the wheel, just like that. So you've got the little sprue cut marks, hold them together, not too much glue because you don't want it flooding all around your fingers, and we just whip you around the tyres like that. Okay, so now we can move on and we can get this collar that goes on the back. Now you get two different types with this. Depending obviously if you've got the big mouth or the small mouth, depends on the different collar, so check your numbers for it because they're slightly different fits on how they go on. But basically this should just nicely make a very nice fit and just literally be a drop-in part. Just need to get the collar on first like that, and it should just drop in and be very straightforward in there. So once you're in and you're happy, usual thing, a little bit extra thin, around that entire area. Just like that. Now don't worry about the flat part. We use this one here from the other one with the white, because that will still go in and you can fit it all down afterwards. By putting this in though, it just makes it a lot easier when we can put the gear in, because we can get it all covered up and ready for spraying. But it would say stick this on first then put it in, but it will go in afterwards, so don't worry about that too much. Next thing we can do is, obviously if you wanted to do it right now, we can fit the nose. Whoops, it's a straightforward join. You should have quite a nice fit. It's a very nice fit as it goes on, and it just basically will sit on there with no problem at all. One little thing to mention on the nose, if we bring you in nice and close for this, I can show you something. The actual panel lining, as you can see running round there's a panel line that goes round it. Now the thing is, in real life they don't have that panel lining, there's nothing there. So if you were being picky, you could literally put a little bit of perhaps thinned putty or something over the top of that, Mr. Surfacer, and sand it down and then put it in. The reason it's got it on there is that it has a cover that covers up the actual, because it's the angle of attack sensor that goes on there. Now the thing is, that sensor, when it's covered over, obviously gets weathering around it, so it usually shows up as being this slightly lighter area all around it because it's covered paint and it hasn't got so dirty. That's the reason for that one. So if you were picking, that's a panel line that does need to come off. But as I say, you can pop it on now and that will take care of it. Obviously if you're doing the 132s, they need to have a bit of filler, a little bit of weight in the nose to hold them down, because obviously they've got a huge engine behind there. No such problem with these. So that basically just goes on like that. We'll attach that properly in a moment. The other thing that we can actually do now is the actual the flaps, or flaperons should I say, at the back. So what we're going to do is just lightly take off those tabs that are attaching it to the sprue. Now you've got two types. You've got the ones coming straight out and the ones at a slight angle. Obviously you pick the one you want to do. We're going to have this particular one in the drooped position, so we're just going to snip off all the ones which are going straight back that aren't angled down. There again, we just tidy them up. Give a bit of a sand. Move those pegs off, and then also what you've got is a little insert to go in the bottom just down there, so making sure you've got the right one. They're a very nice fit. They'll just go straight on like that, bit of extra thin, just on, and you're good to go. And then these literally will just clip in very nicely into the hole. If you can find it, there we go. Just sits in there just like that, and then obviously for making painting a bit easier, it's actually easier to leave it as a loose fit. You can fix it afterwards, but for the moment it's a lot easier just to have it like that, and then that way when we're masking up down the back here, it's not so much of a problem having to go around it. So if you don't actually glue that into position yet, although you can pop it in just to see what it's like, and that does that bit. Right, on with the tail section. Pretty straightforward. Make sure when you're taking them off the sprues not to over sand, because they're again very good fit. So we've got two halves of the upper tail, just goes together like that, and then with a bit of glue we're just going to literally touch and let it do its own work. So we're just going to run it right the way around everywhere. Just do it up on the inside. As I say, don't over glue that part because it really doesn't need it. Once you've got it down, just give it a little nudge, make sure you're all happy with how it's laying like that. Now back half, you've got the lower part of the rudder here. You need to open up, there's a hole, little one in the middle. You can do it afterwards. If you hold it up to the light you'll be able to see it, but it's best to open that hole up first. And then we've got this little clamp here which is going to sit down on the pins on the tail, which I'll show you in a minute. So that literally goes in just like this. It's going to go on like that, and we'll just glue that into position. Just like so, and then the other half goes on, and then in the meantime, sorry, we're almost getting ahead of ourselves here, you've got this little tiny spacer right here, and that just goes in the back. It's not massively necessary, but it's a nice little touch to have the spacer in there, because then you get the right width. But you do have to be careful when you're lining the two up like this. Always better to start from the back, and that way you get them in the right place. So we're just going to glue these bits together, and then we'll just glue this from the inside just like so. We just hold it a sec, pull it all together. And we'll just give it a little pinch at the top just to make sure it's nicely together. We're going to give it a little sand anyway, but it will just hold it together. And we'll just run some down the back here as well. And we'll just hold that a few seconds. And then what we're going to do, we're going to then, if you put some glue on this back edge here, like that, we can actually put the back end of the rudder in. We'll just glue one half on like that. Same to the other side, just like complete there. Carefully drop that in. A little push together. Bit of glue down that back. Underneath. Just like that, and then to bring the two and hold them together, drop a glue at the back like that. Then you've got this little square part here. Now the little dip, there's a little tiny chunk out of it, it goes to the bottom. And that will sit on the rudder just like that, and there's our tail section done. And then if you put a tiny bit of glue in the front, you can put in the small little aerial which goes on the leading edge there, which sits in like that, and then tiny bit of glue just in the hole, and you've got these little vent covers at the back, which the tallest part goes to the top, which you'll get. So we just give that a little nudge and get that straightened up just like that. Goes on there. Same on the other side. Drop in the hole. Just take your time with these because they do tend to fly away if you not got hold of them right, like this one's going to do. It's going to play up, there's always one. Here we go, made a bit of a fingerprint on there which was have to sand off, unfortunately. There we go, that's on there as well. And then literally the tail, I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes, but in a moment the tail is going to sit on just like that. And then you can glue that in, and then it's a loose fit just up and down onto it. Also have to be a bit careful here, but we're going to line up the holes and it just sits on there just like that. Now the beauty of this is, as I was saying before, if you're going to go and do the shows, it literally comes along and you can pull it off, put it in your case upside down so the weapons and the gear doesn't get damaged in transit, and that's the thing to go with it. We've also got the pylons on the outside. Obviously make sure you get the right one. You've got here, as you might be able to see, the slight difference in the two. I'll bring you in a bit closer. You can see probably the difference there. One of them's got a little, it's very flat. The one at the bottom is the Block 50. It's quite a flat, it's the newer type. And whereas the one at the back has got like little teeth on the end of it. Slightly different. The lights can only go in one way. There's a little bump on there, and it goes to the starboard one has got the bump. So their lights will actually only fit one way round. And there we go, that's that basically done. So what we can also do is push the tails on, which are on the rubber grommets. There again, you can have them on and off, but they'll sit on just like that for the moment. And then we can get in, and what we're going to do first, we're going to paint up the metal areas on the exhaust, and then we can mask them up before they actually go on. These engines actually fit. It's going to go on like this. So if we just bring these parts together, we can see where we're to now. Sits on like that. Here we go, and we're looking very sort of F-16ish now, basically together. Got a few little areas just to tidy up at the front here, and then what we can start to do is, I say, we're going to get the metal areas done next, then we're going to get the cockpit fitted, painted up, and then we can work on the canopy of actually polishing that up to bring that up to get rid of the centre seam and things like that.